Police and crime commissioners will pick the chief constable, decide on the priorities for the force and help set the budget. But they won't be in charge of the police on the streets. That'll be left to experienced officers. The Commissioner will listen to victims of crime when setting policy, and it's hoped this will give you a greater say in how your force is run. It replaces the current system of an authority made up of councillors and independents. So who's standing? Anyone's allowed, so long as you've not been convicted of a criminal offence that could have landed you a prison sentence. There's plenty of politicians from Labour and the Conservatives, whose idea it all is. The Lib Dems don't agree with it, but there are some of them standing, and a few smaller parties and independents. There have been complaints that it's too expensive to stand. Just to enter will cost you a whopping £5,000. That shouldn't be a problem for them once they've been elected. Salaries are expected to be between £65,000 and £100,000. But one problem is that not many people know what they are, or that there's an election coming in the first place. Last week, the Electoral Reform Society said these elections are in danger of turning into a farce. Turnout could be as low as 20%. The Home Secretary says there'll be a big campaign about it.
There will be some work being done by the Home Office, obviously neutral in terms of not referring to any candidates, but just about what the role is and what the elections are about.
But will people bother to turn out for something they don't know much about? It doesn't mean they're not bothered about crime, just perhaps that they've never really thought about the way the police are run. They may have a view on a politician running their force, and that might be what's putting them off.
This is BBC Three Counties Drive. Let's introduce the candidates to you. We are just waiting for Sandra Glenn, the Independent, to join us, so she'll join us very, very shortly. So let's go round the room. Jazz Palmer, Conservative, welcome to the programme. Bedfordshire businessman and former Metropolitan Police officer. I'm going to give all of you 1 minute to just go through your basic manifesto, if that's okay, Jazz. If I can start with you in 1 minute, what are your views? What is your objective? Would it be as a police commissioner?
Well, what I want to bring to this role of a police commissioner is my experience as a former police officer. And I'm local. I have lived in rural Bedfordshire for the last 25 years. I have worked in Bedford for 25 years. I've been a borough councillor. I'm visible and accessible. I run a public-facing business. And that is the experience which I want to bring to this role.
In less than 30 seconds. It's fantastic. Jazz, you have a nice picture of you on your website with David Cameron. How are you going to convince him not to make further cuts to Bedfordshire Police?
Well, the cuts have already been set. Most of the public services are facing cuts. So there is no way of getting around it. But what we can do is, obviously, there are fundings available. And that would only be done if we provide a good business case to him. And I'm sure, given that, and also a good business case, we can always get more funding as well.
OK, we'll come back to Jazz and back to all our panel, of course, throughout the course of the afternoon. Ollie Martins is from Labour. He's at the Labour Party conference in Manchester. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello, Roberto.
Welcome to the programme. You're a former service coordinator with victim support and a member of the Territorial Army. And just like all the candidates, I will give you 60 seconds to outline your view, your policy, and what it would be as a police commissioner.
Well, what I want to say is that in the last 3 days, in each of the last 3 days, we've seen an event that is pertinent to the election on the 15th of November. Yesterday saw National Police Memorial Day, reminding us of the risks the police take on our behalf, and I'd like to just take this opportunity to pay tribute to the sacrifice of PC John Henry, because of course it's not just here in Manchester that police officers have lost their lives in the line of duty. On Saturday, we saw a riot by drunken members of the so-called English Defence League who pelted the police with bricks and bottles, demonstrating once again why the EDL candidate has to be about the least appropriate person running in this election. And on Friday, there was a meeting of the Bedfordshire Police Authority, which approved a further reduction in police strength of 100 officers and 56 PCSOs as a direct result of the Tory-led government's 20% police budget cuts. So a vote for my Tory rival, as we've just heard, will be a vote for an apologist for these cuts and sweeping privatisation of our police, whereas a vote for me will be a vote for someone who will fight these cuts.
Ollie Martins, you mentioned Kevin Carroll. We'll come to Kevin very shortly. He's from the British Freedom Party, which is different to the party you suggested. You oppose privatisation, Ollie. Does that mean you would end all outsourcing at Bedfordshire?
I certainly won't go in for this sweeping privatisation that we have on the table at the moment. So the G4S proposal, if I'm elected as Police Commissioner in Bedfordshire, that will not happen.
Okay. Linda Jack, Liberal Democrat, former youth worker and local councillor, of course. In 1 minute or less, what would be your... what would you deliver as Police Commissioner?
The primary purpose of the state is to protect its citizens, whether that's through your army or your police. And so the primary purpose of the PCC has to be to keep people safe, has to be a voice of the people of Luton and Bedfordshire, to hold the police to account. But equally important, I think people must seem to be forgetting this, that it's Police and Crime Commissioner, and that's about cutting crime, and that you can do that through detecting, prosecuting and preventing it, and I'm very interested in how we prevent it. But in the middle of all this, we have to make sure that witnesses and victims are properly heard. In terms of me doing that job, I'm the only candidate that's lived and worked in Bedford, Luton and Mid-Beds. I've been a candidate in Mid-Beds and Luton, and I've also been a councillor, as you said, in Bedford. My expertise is in being a voice for others, and I think that's the most important role, bringing others together to actually make a difference. For example...
Time's up, Linda, unfortunately. Okay. Your party has said, Linda, that it doesn't want to see policing become a political football. So why are you standing as a Lib Dem? Because your party's opposed to all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons we're opposed to it is because we don't want it to be a political football. And for that very reason, I think electing a Lib Dem, especially somebody like me who's very independent, means that it won't be. The fact of the matter is the people have voted for a government that has that in its manifesto. So consequently, we have to live with the consequences of that. If this is what people want, then they deserve a choice, and they should actually have a liberal choice as well as any other choice.
Kevin Carroll from the British Freedom Party, carpenter, co-founder of the English Defence League and vice chair of the British Freedom Party. Kevin, in 60 seconds or less, what would you deliver as Police Commissioner?
Firstly, I'm born and bred in Luton Town, and I'm passionate about my town, I'm passionate about my country, passionate about my county. I love the people within it. I've spent all my life fighting for one reason or another for the citizens of Luton Town. What I would deliver is getting the police back to being the police, getting them away from politics. I'm just a humble carpenter, and I'm like every other mum and dad out there, and I have exactly the same fears and concerns as they do. They're just worried about their children's futures, and they just want a safe and prosperous future for their children, their grandchildren, and that's all I want. But I want a level, equal playing field across the board, no matter where you're from, no matter what your skin colour, your religion, anything. A level playing field, and I want a serious crackdown on crime, and I want the criminals to be the ones that are in fear, not the decent people living in their homes being hassled by antisocial behaviour, or by drugs, or by theft, or by violence, and knife crime. On a zero tolerance on knife crime.
Time's up. Time's up, Kevin.
You go to jail.
I've got to stop you there. And Ollie alluded to this. You're from the British Freedom Party, which is the political wing of the EDL.
Yes, it's a separate entity, but it's hand in glove.
OK. Last year's EDL march in Luton, Kevin, cost £1 million. 1% of the entire policing budget on one day was spent on that march. Would you be seeking to prevent another march happening?
It depends whether the radicalisation of Muslims and terrorism and extremism is dealt with. If it's not dealt with, then we shall see a return to Luton, due to the fact that Luton Borough Council, Labour-run Luton Borough Council, has failed miserably, and the Prevent scheme has failed miserably. The people of Luton and Bedfordshire as a county have been let down miserably. Luton in Harmony has failed miserably. But 50% of that demonstration, at each demonstration, what you forget to mention is that the left, the Labour Party, the left and the violent UAF, they are 50% of the counter demonstration. So what they're saying is it's okay for them to demonstrate against us, but not good for us to demonstrate to express our democratic right. Now that is fascism. They're saying it's okay for them, but not for us.
I'm sure we'll come back to that topic.
So the costs were split each time.
I'm sure we'll come back to that topic throughout the course of the programme.
It's a democracy we live in.
Sandra Glenn, independent, thank you. Made it through the traffic. You've worked in corporate business and the volunteer sector. You've volunteered as an independent advisory group member for Bedfordshire Police. In 60 seconds or less, what would you deliver as Police Commissioner?
Well, I'm taking the challenge to meet the Home Office's mandate to bring more third sector, community champions and social enterprise into the policing. My mandate is about confidence, concerns and complaints, and to raise the confidence of the people of Bedfordshire, because there are lots of fear of the police at the moment, a lot higher than it is at the moment, because unfortunately with the recent death of Delaney Brown, it's come to my attention that people are concerned. They're not sure whether the police are doing the job that they're meant to be doing. as an independent advisor, I'm critiquing the police on a daily basis. But I realise that I need to be more in touch, and we need to be more in touch with everybody's fears. I'm going to open a hotline for people to complain and to learn about how to complain, to raise the service by improving it by the public. The public will have a direct ownership of being more engaged with the police. But I'm also here to cut crime. But I'm also here to improve the youth association with the police, so we can actually inform young people about their rights to stop and search.
Sandra.
Thank you.
You're the only independent in this race, Sandra. How hard is it going to be to convince people that you're a serious candidate?
Not as hard as you think. Everybody I've spoken to, a lot of the organisations I've spoken to, I feel it's the right thing for an independent voice to be in that seat, to be free of the politics, but also to take on board the crime panel. The police and crime panel will have an oversight of that role. So you'll be feeding into councillors and other. It's majority council around. It's about 10 members of councillors and 2 are independent. So if you've got an independent lead feeding into that panel, you've got a better chance of having the police needs and the people's needs met.
18 minutes past 6 o'clock. This is the first of our 3 special debates with the prospective police commissioners tonight for Bedfordshire. And joining me this evening, Jazz Palmer, Ollie Martins, Linda Jack, Kevin Carroll and Sandra Glenn. And the question is what a police and crime commissioner can do. They can appoint the chief constable of their force and sack them. They can set out local policing priorities, report annually on the progress, set out the force budget and community safety grants. And the cost of these elections, let me tell you, is around £125 million. Election day is on the 15th of November. The prediction is, candidates, that we will witness the lowest turnout in British political history come 15th of November. Whoever wins, whichever 5 of you wins, will you actually have any mandate to go and deliver? Jazz Palmer.
Well, we live in a democratic country where we have 2 choices. We either vote or we don't vote. And all the people who go out and vote, I believe we have a 100% mandate on that. I would like everyone to go out and vote, but that's their choice if they don't want to vote. But the point at the moment is that we are making progress. We are making people aware of these elections. We are making people aware the importance of having a police and crime commissioner. And once people are aware of that, forget about the negative which the press is sending out.
It's not negative. I mean, this is serious political concern suggesting we'll have the lowest turnout in British political history. It shows at the moment that the public don't care.
Well, you're predicting something that hasn't happened. It doesn't work like that. Now, my view is, and I have been on the doorsteps, that people are interested. It's just that they weren't aware of it. And as the time goes by, we've still got 45 days to go. People will be interested in what's going on.
Okay.
And I'm sure they will come out and they will vote because it affects them.
Linda Jack, Liberal Democrats, so 45 days to go. Do you think the public will be enamoured of this election and turn out and vote in big numbers?
I think one of the big problems is that the argument for police and crime commissioners by the Tories was that it was in order to give people a say. So I find it extraordinary that they're not prepared for people to have election addresses to go to every house in the country. And the idea that everybody has got access to the internet is fanciful, and that they would use it for that, I think, is really wrong. So I am concerned about the turnout. As Jazz said, I think it's really important that people get out and vote. The danger is in Bedfordshire that we could end up with somebody who believes that people like me should be sent to the gallows and wants to bring back the death penalty. I don't think that is what the most of the people in this county want. So I would urge them to come out. I would say that they want somebody that is committed to actually cutting crime, to making them safe, to listening to them and taking their concerns seriously.
If you are returned as the winning candidate and there is a shockingly low turnout, how will you be able to justify your position?
Well, we have a choice. People can go and vote or not. And if they choose not to vote, that isn't a vote against. It is just they're not voting. Well, no, because if they want to vote against, they need to get themselves down to the polling station to vote. So we are a democracy, and actually the people have the responsibility about whether they turn out or not.
Ollie Martins, Labour. Ollie, the predictions are the lowest turnout in British political history. There are a lot of questions being asked of why the 15th of November has been chosen, middle of the winter, of course. Will you have a mandate if you're returned?
Well, it's a ridiculous and disastrous time of year to hold an election. But what I'm finding is that while there isn't much awareness of the election itself, there is a lot of awareness of police cuts and the fact that we are losing 185 police officers since 2010, the fact that we're losing practically half of the PCSOs in the county. People are very concerned about that, and I think that if in the next 45 days people make the connection between the police cuts and the opportunity that the 15th of November gives them to send the government a message about those cuts, then I think we could be pleasantly surprised by the turnout.
And when you go door to door, Ollie, talking to people about this, are they interested?
Yes, they're certainly interested in police cuts and the opportunities to send that message to the government.
Kevin Carroll, British Freedom Party. If there is a low turnout as predicted, and you are returned as the Police Commissioner for Bedfordshire, how will you be able to justify that your role is actually merited because people have voted for you?
Well, why shouldn't it be justified? I've just as much opportunity and right to be Commissioner as everybody else in this room. I'm a Bedfordshire citizen. I'm a proud Bedfordshire citizen. I'm well liked. I'm well known. There's no reason that I would have to justify myself because I'm a concerned adult. I'm a parent. I've got every reason in the world to be.
But if the turnout is low and the general public in Bedfordshire just haven't gone to the polls, they've just shown that they're not interested in the role of Police Commissioner.
I don't think that will happen. I genuinely believe that people will vote for me because I genuinely believe that people are just sick and tired of career politicians like Wally, who's been a career politician all his life. He's bounced from Liverpool as councillor, twice in Netherley and Belvale ward. He's been a councillor, a deputy leader of the Labour Party in Liverpool, in Derby. This is just a job vacancy to these politicians. They don't care about the people in
whichever one of you is
do.
returned, isn't that a political position in itself?
Well, if I'm in a political position, then everybody else is. I mean, everybody in this room nearly is standing for a political party. Jazz, this lady next to me for Liberals, I'm with the British Freedom, but it still doesn't revoke from the fact that I'm a concerned Bedfordshire citizen, and I have every right to be Crime Commissioner, and I would do a good job. And I'm an extremely formidable individual, and I won't shirk away from the subject matter that scares everybody or the problems. I just don't do that. I'll grab the bull by the horns, and I'll take that job on. And I'll do it. I'll do it successfully.
Well, what is the subject matter that scares everybody?
A main subject matter that scares everybody is dealing with terrorism and extremism within Bedfordshire, across the country. Can I
just throw it to the other panel? Jazz, is that the biggest concern when you go door to door?
I don't think that's the
first
thing
it's
on
the
their
biggest
mind.
concern, but I'm saying it's a major concern.
Well, Kevin, when you go knocking door to door saying, I want to be the Police Commissioner, vote for me, what is the one thing people are telling you? What do they want?
It's mainly fear of violent crime, knife crime, about their children going out at night and their parents worrying about whether their children are going to be attacked or stabbed. The problem with knife crime is that people getting caught with knives are not going to jail.
Sandra Glenn, let me bring you into the conversation. When you go door to door, what are people's concerns? What are they telling you?
They're mostly worried about antisocial crime, antisocial behaviour, drug use, and it's mostly petty burglary. It's very it's minor compared to major in Bedfordshire as far as I'm concerned.
Ollie Martins is joining us live from the Labour Party in conference. Ollie, what do people say to you?
Well, they're concerned about antisocial behaviour, and they're also very concerned about visible policing. And of course it's visible policing that is the main thing that we are losing with the police cuts and the fall in police strength that we're currently seeing in Bedfordshire.
Linda Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sandra, actually. I think a lot of what concerns people is what affects them. And for most of us, we're not affected by serious crime, we're affected by petty crime. So we have to take that seriously, and that's why I think we need to invest in a strategy that deals with keeping young people away from crime to start with. The issue around terrorism being the thing that scares people the most. Obviously, if people are, like me, used to go on the tube every morning, it's something that's in the back of your mind. But to demonise a whole religion because of the actions of a few,
I don't think anyone has yet.
I'm afraid if you read, if you read what the EDL and the British Freedom Party say, that is what they have said, and that is your complaint against the police, and your co-leader,
Let's get back to the real policing issues which matter to people. Alf Hitchcock, Chief Constable of Bedfordshire, has said more and more officers will be carrying tasers. Do you want your police officers to be armed? Sandra Glenn.
Not particularly with tasers, no. I've met somebody last week who you get a lifelong scar after you've been tasered. And I don't think people are aware of the effects of a child watching a parent being tasered.
Okay, I will need to be brief
emotional.
on this point.
Yeah.
Kevin Carroll, do you want the police to be armed?
No, I don't. I don't even like tasers. I mean, tasers, in the 7 years, 8 years the Americans have been using tasers, I think there's something like 360, 370 individuals have died the next day from heart attacks, including professional footballers, American footballers. It's a 50,000 volt shock straight through the heart.
Okay.
You know,
Ollie Martins.
it's not good.
No, it's not the way that we want policing to go. But I do fear that if we're moving away from neighbourhood policing that's based on being preventative, and if we're moving towards reactive policing, where it's back to the time of Z cars, and that's going to result in a falling confidence in the police, and I think it's going to make it more difficult for the police to do their job. So I think if that trend continues, then it is going to be something. They're going to be in situations more often where they're going to feel the need to resort to tasers,
Okay.
and that's why we need to do as much as we can to protect neighbourhood policing and stop these cuts.
Jazz, would you want your police officers to be armed?
Well, as a former police officer, yes, I do support the police to carry tasers. But as always, we always give an opportunity or a chance to police officers to opt out if they don't want to. But given the circumstances of the last 2 weeks, and also the fear and the danger that the police officers face, especially when they're on their own, a taser is a damn sight better than getting shot.
Linda Jack.
I agree that I wouldn't want the police to be armed, and I think there's a lot of serious questions about tasers. The police themselves don't want to be armed, and I think while the police themselves don't want to be armed, we should respect that.
There are cuts of 20% coming to the police service of Bedfordshire, having to make savings of £20 million by 2015, the loss of 96 officers and 56 PCSOs. The Chief Constable says he is massively worried about funding post-2015. He's talked as well about stressed staff. Kevin Carroll, if you returned as the police commissioner on day one, what would you say to the Chief Constable? How would you ensure that the public see the police officers on the beat, as it were? They actually saw the visible line, blue line.
Well, that's something that I'm really keen on doing. I want to return back to the police being the police, the bobbies on the street, walking down the road. People don't feel safe when they just see a police car zooming past at 25 miles an hour. They want to see bobbies walking down the street. They're out cutting the grass on a summer's afternoon. They want to say hello to. They want to see a face. They want somebody tangible to say hello to talk to make them feel that they're in their area. And the burglars and the thieves and the vandals and the antisocial whoever, they'd have to be on their toes, and they'll be scarce because they'll know that bobbies are on the beat in that area. Now, to get this, obviously, there's 6,000 police officers being struck across the country, 100 from Bedfordshire.
96 officers and 56 PCSOs.
Yeah, it's shocking. And so I'd be looking to make savings, not on the police frontline services. Somehow we need to try to make it on the backroom services, whether we have to bring in volunteers to do the paperwork, so police officers are not bogged down with bureaucratical paperwork. They probably spend half of their shift in the back rooms doing paperwork, which is a complete waste of time. Let's get the police back to being the police, where they solve crime and chase criminals.
How will you make the police more responsive to local needs? Bedfordshire is a very diverse community. Kevin, you're returned as Commissioner for Police in Bedfordshire, and a Muslim group will come to you saying because they feel threatened or they feel undervalued and they want to march and stage a protest. Will you allow it?
I'd allow them as long as it's within the realms of freedom of speech and democracy. If they're spitting out hate speech or vile hate speech towards soldiers like the homecoming parade, then no, I wouldn't allow it. It's religious of hate speech, or as they do. But listen, I've got no problem with Muslims. This is where Simon's going completely wrong. Muslims are human beings. My problem is with militant radical Islam.
What would happen if whoever becomes Commissioner, it is a political role, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I think you're there to serve the people, the public, and I love the public. I love the people. That's simple as that. I am a man of the people, always have been. And I believe the police force are there to serve and protect the public, not to do the politicians' bidding.
There has been some debate over the weekend about police uniforms. Some police officers, some police Chief Constable are suggesting we need to go to high-vis outfits rather than the traditional police uniform. Very briefly, Saundra, what kind of police uniform would you envisage? High-vis or the traditional look?
There are several uniforms depending on what operation they're working with, so they're appropriate at the moment, the way they are.
Kevin Carroll.
I think there's nothing wrong with the police uniforms as it is. I mean, the police have to look like the police as well, and that's what comforts them.
Ollie Martins.
Well, I mean, if Jazz Palmer gets his way, then they're certainly going to need to be in high-vis uniforms if they want to be seen at all, because there are going to be so few of them left.
I think certainly keep them as they are and then use the high-vis when they need them.
Jazz Palmer.
Well, I'll make sure, as Ollie said, they're in high visibility. At least the criminals will be afraid.
You don't want to give them a lollipop stick on the zebra crossing, do you?
Panel, thank you.
High vis.
Jazz Palmer, Ollie Martins, Linda Jack, Kevin Carroll and Sandra Glenn. This is BBC.